Welcome to the Let's Run Facebook Ads, the podcast with myself, James Urquhart. Nick isn't here today because apparently he's busy. So I'm actually joined with Matt O'Connor, who is the founder of Actuate Agency, who specializes in developing Magento e-commerce websites and pride themselves on helping clients grow through focused UX improvements. And today we're going to be discussing the difference between Shopify, Woocommerce and Magento from a non-biased Matt O'Connor. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm slightly worried about the unbiased, but no, I'm good.
Well, it's fine. Clearly you're a Magento guy. So I'm, and a lot of the guys and girls that listen to this are small e-commerce brands, and a lot of them will be using Shopify. And I guess for someone even like myself, who obviously we run Facebook ads and social ads and TikTok and all the rest of it for clients, we speak to a lot of companies that have an e-commerce presence, and a lot of them will use one of these, Shopify, Magento and WooCommerce. And from my perspective, one that we've had issues with in the past is WooCommerce because the pixel information. So again, we're very open-minded when someone comes to us. As long as the UX and people are converting, we're pretty content. But I guess an overview from you, who are you, what's Actuate, why Magento, and what are you guys doing?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm, as you introduced me, I'm Matt. So founded the agency 7 years ago. Always had this thing about getting inside somebody's head. So my background is I went to drama school. So, and a big part of that is understanding what makes people tick. So you can then pull that out and use it in the performance. And when that didn't take off, because I'm not quite a Brad Pitt, like, well, how can I use these skills? And I started building websites and stuff. And it became clear quite quickly that actually, if you can get inside somebody's head and understand what their motivations are and what makes them tick and what's actually driving them towards something, you can take control of the situation. Not in a dodgy, scary film kind of way, but if you're trying to get them to a certain point on your website, or you want them to follow a process, the more you can understand how they want that process to work and the more you can align it, the more likely they are to follow that path. Which got me into e-commerce because most e-commerce brands saw the value in that, because that there's a direct correlation between hitting that end goal, that point B, and giving you credit card details. Magento is, I started using it when it was on version 1.3, so 2008, around then. I lose track of time, I've been doing it so long. My skills have grown with it and my team's grown around it. Back then we didn't have Shopify. I suppose the closest thing we had to that was EKM, but it wasn't that big back then. WooCommerce was just coming around, but it had its problems because it was open source, unregulated, a lot of security problems going on. So Magento kind of became the go-to one. Mm-hmm. So then, when I set up the agency, it just made sense to keep Magento because we knew it and focus on what we were actually doing, which was understanding who somebody's customers were and understanding what path they want to take to make that purchase and how we could align our client with it, whether it's answering their questions correctly or building trust or just making that experience as smooth and uncumbersome as possible, because it's different for every single one. And so we stuck with Magento because it didn't really matter about the platform. It was the experience and the engagement with the customer that was really important. The platform was just kind of the foundation that you don't see. It's important because it creates that stable environment, but once you start building on it, you don't really tend to worry about it as much anymore because it's there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So from Magento, so if we looked at, say, Shopify again, because it's the sort of, it's widely regarded as the best, isn't it, from e-commerce widely. I would class Shopify as like an all-in-one platform. I don't know if that's the right term. Is Magento similar to that? Because I know on Shopify you can process orders, you can manage your items. Obviously you can plug in email platforms as well to that. in a sort of singular dashboard, the ones I've looked at for clients. Is Magento similar to that? Because again, I've got no experience with that. Is that similar?
Basically, yeah. So Magento is a dedicated e-commerce core system. So its core systems are products, inventory, shipping, and payments. So a checkout. So if you boil it down into its basics, Magento is a list of products, a basket, and a checkout facility. Shopify is the same. Shopify is a purebred e-commerce platform. It's lists products, has a checkout, processes the orders. The only one out of the three we're talking about today that isn't one of them is Woocommerce. So Magento and Shopify, really, if you take away the features and all the bells and whistles, they're the same thing. The biggest difference straight away is Magento is hosted, so it's yours. You download it, you install it, you configure it, you set it up. Shopify is hosted and run by Shopify, so you can't download Shopify and install it on your own server. You can't run your own version of it. You can't go and play with the core of it. It's a closed system. They've both got benefits to that. So having hosted means it's cheaper to host, which is why you pay a monthly fee to Shopify, and you don't really need a developer to get one up and going because it's there, it runs. Whereas Magento, because you're downloading it and then configuring it and setting it up, you've got to get a developer involved. You've got to have a host environment. So the initial costs are higher on Magento than Shopify. So but that's the biggest difference if you ignore all the plugins, extras, and kind of business use cases.
Which actually brings me on to my next point, which is actually the ease of use, because I'm assuming then for your sort of smaller, say, one-man bands, or I call them mama and papa outfits, that have had an idea and gone, oh, well, I'm going to sell this product today. Actually, from an easy use and, like you said, developer perspective, Shopify for that type of customer is perfect, whereas actually it's quite difficult to use Magento.
Definitely. So I'm a firm believer that each platform is right for a certain point in someone's business. Okay. So WooCommerce, I'm not a fan, but it's got a place. If you've got a brand new product, or your product's costing a lot and you haven't got a lot of budget to play with, and you've got a very small kind of stock range, 5, 10, 15 items, WooCommerce is pretty cost effective. It's a plug into WordPress, which is free. It's not going to cost you a lot. You've probably already got a website, which is why you're looking at it in the first place. So you've already got the hosting costs up in place. There's plenty of themes out there for it. It's quite a cheap way of selling quite quickly. That said, if you want to be a bit more professional and you want to take it seriously, Shopify is then great for those kind of businesses where you don't want to invest tens of thousands yet, but you do need to get selling, and you do need to make that journey and that experience quite pleasant. Shopify is perfect. There is an argument that Shopify Plus is really good for the big spenders, but that's where I think Magento comes in. Once you're kind of spending 10, 20 grand on your e-commerce website, and you're in the realms of wanting that website to work around how your processes run, so how your back office runs, how you want to manage things, how you want to do stock management. That's when you want Magento, because then Shopify is all about you using it the way they want you to. Magento is about using it how you need to, but that's because of the way they're built. So yeah, I think each one's got its place. Now, obviously, once you're doing 5, 10, 15, 20 million, you need something bigger than Magento altogether. So I think
from a scalability, so someone, let's say ABC Limited was selling via Shopify, and they wanted to, their business is growing, suddenly they've got staff, and they're suddenly, right, we need to invest in either Shopify Plus, and they were going to go from the standard Shopify to Shopify Plus, and they went out to market and went, oh, should I go Magento, or should I say, in terms of that transition?
Somebody needs to think about it, because
okay,
this is my only gripe with Shopify. So everyone thinks that because I'm a Magento boy, I hate Shopify. I don't hate it. because it's a good system. Do you know what I mean? It does a really good job. It's well built. It's good, but it gets costly very quickly. So their model is everything's monthly. You put a module in, that's got a monthly cost to it, and when you start to get to the point where you're $1 million, $2 million, or you want advanced reporting, all of a sudden you're looking at Shopify Plus, and it's $2,000 a month on top of what you're already spending. So straight away, that first 12 months on Shopify Plus is going to cost you 20 to 30 grand. That's before your agency's in there to give you advice and to put in a strategy. That's before your e-commerce manager sat there for a month going, I don't know what to do with this. And that's before COVID's closed down your logistics for a couple of weeks to stop you from selling. Do you know what I mean? It gets quite expensive very quickly, Shopify does. Don't get me wrong, if you're an experienced e-commerce brand and you're doing well, and you can stomach that investment and you prefer that platform because the back end might be more familiar or more easy for you to use, makes total sense. If you're trying to grow something you want best in service, then if you're on Shopify, that point's the perfect time to go, do I need to re-platform now? Because Shopify, you don't own the system. You can't take the code out of the system and put it into Magento or WordPress. So at that point, you're probably going to be looking at spending 20 to 30 grand on a re-platform. And it's whether or not you want to re-platform and do a one-off 20, 30 grand and then have smaller monthly fees to keep for hosting and support and all the rest of it, or whether actually what you're doing with Shopify warrants you to stay on that system. Because the other thing you've got is Shopify's obviously got its fees for your transactions. So every time you sell something on Shopify, not only are you paying monthly fees, you're also giving Shopify a percentage of your sale. You can argue that the same happens on Magento, but with Magento, it's if you're with SagePay, they're taking the fee. If you're with PayPal, they're taking the fee. They're only taking a processing fee. Whereas with Shopify, you've got your processing fee if you're using those payment providers, but you then also got a fee directly to Shopify each time you take a sale. And again, if you're doing £1 million a year and they're charging you 2% of each transaction, soon adds up and gets quite costly again.
I generally had no idea, because obviously Shopify, I always see it as an entry level into the e-commerce. I think for any e-commerce company that is testing the market and they don't have developers, or it's just an idea, I personally would say use Shopify all day, because I think it's cheap, it's efficient for what you want it to do, to test the market and product. I think it's fantastic and true, because anybody can set it up, put a theme in, whack a few pictures in, bit of copy, bing bam boom, perfect. But actually, when you get to that next level, which is, I won't say use the term taking it seriously, because that's pretty a bit unfair, but when you're at the level, right, we're actually a business now, we want to scale this. I didn't realize it got so costly, because I always saw Shopify as, like I said, it's like $29 a month. You're like, oh, perfect.
I mean obviously it's a SaaS platform, so you start with basic, you work your way up, and as you work your way up, you get more features. But we consider, so when you're growing past 2 members of staff, so you've got yourself, you've got a business partner, and you've got a picker and a packer, you're then on to like the next level of Shopify. You're not on the lowest level then.
Okay.
And you at that point, it's 1.9% plus 20 pence for every transaction on credit card. If you're a European business and you're taking bank transfers, it's 1.9% plus your 20 pence. If you're doing things like GiroPay and other kind of sort of worldwide payment providers, again, you're getting charged that, but all of those guys are going to have their own fee on the back end, because it's like you're a business owner, you do a back transfer to somebody, your bank goes, yeah, I'm going to charge you for that privilege, whether it's in a monthly fee or whatever, they charge you to do bank transfers or to put cash in. So yeah, so on top of your normal fees for handling cards, you've then got it's 1.9% for the normal, what they call the kind of middle Shopify package, which is like $80 a month. When you're starting out, so if you were really clever, you're like, I can run this on my own. So it's just you're paying $30 a month for Shopify. You're paying 2.2 to 2.3% on each of your transactions plus that 20 pence. It gets quite expensive if you do £1 million on that.
Well, it does, and also if it's a smaller ticket item, if it's a pack of pens or something, 2% isn't the issue. It's the 20p. And I know that sounds crazy, but if your margins are only tight anyway, which hopefully anyone listening, your margins aren't tight, but 20p, over 1,000 transactions, suddenly you look at it and go, oh, could do with that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about how competitive things are at the minute, how logistics are changing, profit margins aren't as big as they used to be. Unless you're a manufacturer or you're making your own products to sell out, you're buying them in. The profit isn't as big as it used to, especially when you're dealing with big. If you're in like a noisy marketplace where there's big boys that have got some real spending power, you've got to suck up a lot of that profit to compete with them, because price is still a massive factor in conversion. So you always think kind of 20-30% profit max.
Yeah. Do you think Shopify, and I know this is going off at a tangent a little, but I think that Shopify did so well so quickly over the last, I'd say 6 years is when they've really grown, haven't they? I think they've grown because of how easy it was to set up a quick store and get it going, but because of drop shippers. It's been so easy to buy some stuff off a Chinese website, which I won't name them, but we know what they are, and drop ship, because it's been so easy to sell on social.
I've got a Shopify website. I'm not afraid to admit it. Do you know what I mean?
I love
Magento play.
But I love this, Matt. You've let the bad.
No.
I love it.
It started as a bit of research. So a lot of people, especially last year, were like, "Oh, I need to get into drop shipping because brick and mortar isn't working. I need to pivot." So I was like, right, I'll do some research. How easy is it to go from 0 to drop shipping, and how quickly can you do it? Scarily, I had a website up and running within 4 hours, selling cycling products coming from China. I haven't got the jersey in it, actually. I actually ordered off the website just to see if it worked, and I was very surprised when 4 days later the item arrived as described. I was quite impressed. But yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm quite lucky because I know what I'm doing. So 3 or 4 hours for me is quite quick. But still, I reckon somebody who hasn't got dev skills, 3 days, 4 days, it's all set up. They've got a drop shipping system in place. They're holding their stock. They've got no real liability or risk, apart from $30 at the end of the month to Shopify. So yeah, I think you're right. I think the fact that it's such a low price point, because when you're picking a platform, when you see $30 a month, as opposed to a Magento agency that's going to charge you 20-30 grand, you're going to go, well, $30 a month is a lot more. Why are they so different? Because there's a big jump there.
Yeah, and I don't think the education, I know the difference to a level, but the difference is vast, isn't it? Like you said, $30 entry point, but it's very much like HubSpot. I know we're going off now. HubSpot in terms of the CRM space, they've done so well because, hey, here's a free CRM system. Suddenly you're at $4,000 a month going, how the hell did that happen?
Exactly. And I mean, fair play to them. The business model works. And I mean, the brands that are using it, they've got some amazing flagship brands that are doing really well off it.
Gymshark still use Shopify. Fact. How unbelievable is that? Very.
I mean, if Gymshark are listening, I mean, they're more than welcome to come and have a chat with me and save that 30 grand a year. But I looked at Gymshark a few years ago and I saw a case study saying we're on Shopify. I was like, are you serious?
I knew Gymshark for years now because I'm good friends with the owner of a big what's the one I'm looking for? A big expo, sports expo in Birmingham, muscle men stuff, and that's how Gymshark started, was because of that in Birmingham. And I was talking to Ollie, a friend of ours, about Ben's journey and stuff, and it's just incredible. But what I still find just baffling is that they're using Shopify still, a brand of that size, which is now multinational. Even a friend of mine, another friend who actually works in the customer service team there, they're huge and
massive.
They're using Shopify. I think it's nuts.
Now, this is the crazy bit. This is where I get told off sometimes. We had some of our fashion in apparel clients last year. Instead of going to Magento 2, they went to Shopify. I can't blame them, because when you think about those kind of websites, like fashion brand, like your Gymsharks, where you're not really doing anything designer, it is more of it's more of a lifestyle. Look how good this is, that kind of product. You don't need a massive amount of functionality. You haven't got to put bells and whistles on the front end. You don't need a 3D room visualizer to make sure that the flooring you're buying is going to look all right with the sofa that you also thought about. You don't need a sample system because you don't know whether the fabric's going to be right or not, or whether it actually keeps its color. It is literally size, color, purchase.
Okay,
and the
so
rest
actually,
of it, go on.
I was going to say, yeah. So in terms of performance, then, so let's go on to that. So like you were saying, then, if it's say a Gymshark, which is a size and color, or even a color, which is fine, but are some of these, like you said, sofas and some of the sort of larger ticket items, or ones where there's a lot to go into it? Are they the ones where Shopify it could just about, but it's just not fit for purpose?
Yeah, I don't think it'd be right. Gymshark, Beautiful Hooligan, people like that, their objection and their conversion process is about how good someone's going to feel and how appropriate that garment is to their objective. Gymshark, I want to look cool, I want to look fit, I want my ass to look nice at the gym, and I want someone to stare at me. Your product's going to be bang on. Same with Under Armour, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're buying a sofa, that ain't making me look good. But so I've got a bad back. So when I'm buying a sofa, I need something that's quite firm, that's got a lot of lumbar support in it. Historically, website's not going to tell me that. That's going to force me in store and bypass that whole process. Whereas if it was a Magento store, so some of the big sofa brands are on Magento, you go to their sites and you're looking at a sofa and you've got nice videos telling you about it. You've got nice tab systems go along that explain the different fit. You've got nice really close-up visuals of the fabric so you can see what's going on. That's where the journey becomes very personal. And I think when you get into that arena where you've got a very personalized journey and you've got very personal objections to buying a product, Shopify doesn't really stand up to that.
Because that's really interesting. It's really interesting because people that listen to this know I do a lot of running, and I buy a lot of off-trail running shoes, and they're all shit basically. That without being too candid, you can never find a decent one because all the fits are different. But I found there's a new shoe, brand running shoe called On Running. Most people who are into sport, you'd have seen them sort of up and coming the last 2 years. Their site is fantastic from a UX perspective to get you not only just in the brand, but about how the shoe is going to fit your feet. And for me, who do quite a bit of running, and I want a shoe that, rather than buying it and going annoyed after one run going, they're annoying because it's the wrong fit, or, because waterproof trail shoes need to be different sizes than normal running shoes and all this little stuff. And on the website, it's fantastic. So a brand like that wouldn't be able to use Shopify to the level that I would want it.
I don't think they would, because you've got to change that whole process. Gymshark and all that, homepage, category, product, basket, checkout. It's a very linear process. There's design features in there to talk about the features or the quality and some nice lifestyle imagery to back up what they're doing, but the process is very linear. I'm a cyclist. I'm bow-legged. Cycling shoes, and I've got quite wide feet, so cycling shoes for me are really hard because a lot of cycling shoes and a lot of cycling products, like apparel-wise, are very Italian-inspired. So a medium is actually a really extra small because it's designed to suck you all in. Not very flattering for the British body. So, but when you're trying to buy these products online, so like I need wide shoes and I need certain soles to level my feet out. Like you'll find with running, like picking your gait, understanding the fit. Until you start adding additional features in, so Physique do saddles for bikes. They've got a system on their site where you can put your height, your weight, your sit bow measurements, all the kind of stuff you'd have in a bike fit in store into a system. It'll come back and go, you know what, you're a bit chubby. The bull saddle is going to be perfect for you because it'll take your weight, but it will also allow you to flex over your top. And that's where I don't think you can do that with Shopify, not unless you're spending a lot of money and you're really kind of like building additional systems into it. Magento's got a lot of that kind of stuff there ready to open because the way it's built, and it's been around for God knows how long, so a lot of the stuff you want for it's there or been done. So, but that's why Physique's on Magento, because it allows me to do that.
So those bigger brands that, again, you know, that they've got, you know, $500,000 a year to spend on their e-commerce side, which I know is a lot of money, but for some of these brands, it's pennies, isn't it? Really, they can have any system they want, because let's be honest, Shopify and these guys will find a solution for it. Like Gymshark now, I know you saying the actual system's linear, but there'll be some features in there that they probably produce for Gymshark, because let's be honest, they want Gymshark as a client. But for your, you know, people up to £1 million turnover, let's say, you know, we've got Tom, who sells sunglasses, who I know listens to this. He's smashing up, by the way. Incredible. You know, he uses Shopify. For someone like Tom, who I don't know how much he's doing exactly, so don't quote me on that, but he's doing, let's say he's doing 50 orders a day of sunglasses and snowboarding, goggles and the like. When would someone like Tom get to the point where he goes, right, I've now quit my job? Again, you know, because a lot of people who listen to this have this as a side gig. Absolutely, you know, he's done so well. Right, I quit my job. I'm doing this full time. When do I go from Shopify to Shopify Plus, or to move across to Magento? And how much of a ball ache is it, Matt? How much actually, you know, if someone was to come to you today and say, right, I'm on Shopify, I'm doing £1 million a year, and you know, I want to get my sunglasses brand now on Magento, is it worth the hassle?
Strange enough, the figure you just gave then, you're not far off. If you're doing 50 orders a day, that kind of arena, so sunglasses, ski boots, that kind of stuff, your average order value is going to be about £40-50. Just because you're going to have a range of cheaper stuff and a range of more expensive stuff, so somewhere in the middle. Yeah. That's 800 grand a year.
Not bad, is it?
So you're at that point where you're probably starting to think about more about process now. So logistics is probably going to be doing your head in. Once you've started up an e-commerce business and it's starting to go well, no offense, but it's not paid ads that's going to be your first headache. It's not the website that's going to be your first headache. It's shit, Royal Mail coming to collect all the stuff in half an hour, and I've got no idea where the stuff is in the warehouse or who it's going to. You're probably just getting used to picking lists. You've probably not got to the point where you're like, well, you probably don't know about stock bins yet. So that whole warehouse piece is going to be quite big for it. So at 800,000, you're probably now looking at warehouse management systems. So things like Limworks, Store Feeder. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, actually, the website is going to need to tell these systems what it's doing. Right, so do I spend 30 grand a year for the next 3 years, which is 120 grand plus Limworks fee to get these orders out and to optimize what's going on and free up some of my time? Or they'll spend 30 grand first year and probably 12 grand a year after that on Magento or something else, and use that other 20 grand for pay-per-click, SEO, social media ad spend. I'm generalizing it, but if it was me, if I've got something where I'm in control of how I convert a customer, and it's freeing up 15, 20 grand a year, that's the point where I can go, I've got 15, 20 grand now, I can actually go and go get more customers. And then that's when I think you see this, some like Shopify stores, they'll get to a certain level, then they plateau. Whereas I'm biased, but Magento stores, when they hit that level, they carry on going. Because that yearly maintenance fee, that yearly cost to keep it going is nowhere near as big. So it means that you can invest more in your marketing, because if your website converting, the engine's running well, the easiest way to make more money is to throw more traffic at it then.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're hitting that ceiling and you can't do anything about conversion, your SEO is not really going where you need it to because you're in a closed system, you're taking that money out of marketing spend and putting it back into a website. So you end up staying at the same place. You end up spending all that money just to stay where you are. So that's why I see Magento sites kind of exceeding that kind of 1 to 5 mil faster and really becoming much bigger. So to answer your question, if he's at 800 grand a year turnover, he needs to be thinking about what comes next.
So I guess, like you said, when you get to that certain stage, it's not so much about, because let's be honest, by that stage, you probably know your conversion rates across the website. You know, something we discuss a lot on this podcast is sometimes it's not about the traffic, whether it's from social or your PPC, it's actually UX, your website. You know, is your add to cart to initiate checkout shit? Well, why is that? You know, is your initiate checkout to purchase rubbish? Again, why is that? There's so many facets to a website, especially e-commerce website, that, you know, people look at it and go, well, we've had 100 people hit the site and we've only had no orders. Well, okay, but where are they within that transaction? How have they interacted with your website? How many products they viewed? You know, one of our clients' websites is rubbish. I can't be around the bush, but it's really well converting. You look at it and you go, you go rubbish. And even I did initially. I was like, oh my god, and he was convinced.
You said that. You said it a few times on this. Shopify websites look nice. Most of them are from pre-built templates where they've been tweaked a little bit to be on brand. They look clean. They look nice. They look smart. Amazon looks like a pile of, and yet it's it's the highest performing website for e-commerce. I hate the website. Sorry, bozos, but it's disgusting. But from a UX point of view, it's spot on. All the calls to actions where they need to be, or the additional information to support your purchases where it needs to be. The reviews are displayed correctly. Their ecosystem makes it so easy and straightforward to buy that you don't care whether it looks nice or not.
You know what? It's interesting you say about Amazon, because you're right, and I have this discussion a lot about the website. It's ugly as hell. You know, it is. It's like it reminds me of, I describe it as a jumble sale. It is. It's like a charity shop. Everything's thrown in, but the problem is, the UX is so good and fantastic. You can buy stuff very bloody quickly. And a lot of the time, it's stuff you don't really want, and it's so good. And their automation in the back end, in terms of, you know, Nick really a good example. And he actually bought barbecue a couple of summers ago, and I never forget it. About 3 weeks later or 2 weeks later, he got an email saying, it's going to rain soon. You'll need a cover for your barbecue. Now, the automation in that was perfect, and Amazon are very clever in how they do it as well, and that's why they're the best performing in terms of conversion, because they're not. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure their branding team within Amazon look at it and go, oh, what is this? But I bet their sales team sit there and go, we don't need to worry. Exactly. Guys, go put a poster up somewhere. We'll sort this out.
That's another amazing point. Everyone thinks UX is the pixels on the screen of how nicely your website looks. That's design. UX is user experience. A user's experience doesn't stop when they've put their card details in. It's until you've expired every potential purchase out of that customer, UX is active. So unless you're selling a coffin, I know it's morbid, but unless you're selling a coffin, there's a repeat business with everything that's sold.
Well, it is, and even cross-sell and upsell opportunities. Something I use this analogy so much, but when you go to the supermarket, which a lot of people still do, they go down the aisles and they go to the checkouts, and what's next to you? You've got sweets, you've got chewing gums, you've got, I even bought, I have to admit, I even bought some mince pies from Marks and Spencer's because they were on the check, and I thought, I'll have those. They've done me there for £2. They've done me there for £2. I went in for a loaf of bread because it's on the way home, and they've done me for another £2. Amazing.
Yeah. But it's that. I mean, cycling. I'm back to the cycling. I brought cycling shoes. It now means I need cleats. So the website I brought these from has screwed up big time because it's been over a week. I still don't have my cleats, and I won't be going back to their website to buy them. If they'd emailed a couple of days later saying, "Oh, what's your flavour?" because cleats come in different brands, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, God, I need cleats. How stupid of me." Or if they email me,
is that something you can do in Magento?
It's not something you do in platform. You would normally use a third-party system, but that's why Magento is beautiful because it's API based.
Okay.
The version 2 has been built so that you can plug in and extend and augment what it's doing. Don't get me wrong. If you're running Magento Enterprise, Adobe Commerce, I'm still getting used to the new name of it. If you're running Adobe Commerce, you can do stuff like that in there because it's got AI in it. It's got something called Adobe Sensei. Now, if I'm going to spend 30 grand a year on an enterprise system, and I've got a choice between Shopify Plus and Adobe Commerce, and Adobe Commerce gives me Sensei as part of my system, I'm taking Sensei. So Sensei is, you land on the website and you're looking at belts. Sensei knows that you're not a medium, you're a large. And it will show you large belts.
Really?
It also knows that based on your browsing history and who you are, that your favorite colors are red and green. So you're not seeing brown belts anymore. You're seeing the red and green ones straight away. It knows when you get to the checkout what you tend to buy with those items.
Wow. And does that all through Sensei?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's a good name for that. I like that. Sensei.
Yeah.
I like that. It's very clever. I like
Sky. That. So when you're watching Sky and you're using Sky products and it's telling you about stuff and you think, bloody hell, you've got me down to a T with that recommendation. Sensei. They use Adobe Sensei.
And a Shopify don't have that, do they? That level.
Not that level. I mean, don't get me wrong. You're talking the high end of Adobe Commerce there, and there's a lot of effort to set it up. It's not going to be cheap. But if I'm going to pay 30 grand for extra features, I'd want the extra features that Adobe are going to give me. But I am biased. And again, because for me, I'm all about that user experience, that life cycle. Shopify is only going to look after so much of it. And then you plug in loads of other stuff. It's getting quite expensive. Not everything's going to plug into Shopify and play nicely.
No, well, like you said, it's in a way it's a closed book. It's like Apple and the olds. They don't want too much being API'd in because suddenly their model isn't as it is. But yeah, but they won't open it. There won't be floodgates open with it because they're not. Suddenly their model isn't as it was. In terms of things like Sensei and those type of plugins, are there any plugins for Magento that are just that you use that are just incredible, that are just so far away from what Shopify let's forget Woocommerce, it's rubbish. Only because every time I've used Woocommerce, I've had an issue with it with Facebook pixels. It's never gone smoothly, and you need to be a coder, and I am to a level, but it's just so Woocommerce. Thank you for coming, but see you later.
Woocommerce is a CMS system trying to be eCommerce. It's a bastardization of WordPress, so it's never going to do it right. This is where I'm probably a bit strange. So for me, because Magento is so powerful, if I can avoid using a plugin, I will.
Okay.
So Magento already does swatches for, so if you're doing apparel and you want little coloured squares to show the different colours it comes in, that's built in. If you want to swap the product image to a different size product or a different colour product just by choosing the size and colour, it'll do that.
Wow.
Built in.
What about an analytics perspective? So obviously since the iOS update on social, as you know, and it's been a bit of a, should we say a pain would be an understatement. So we've had to really, we've brought in a coder and an analytics expert who's really been syncing Google with all our clients. Does Magento and Google talk like a Shopify site would?
They do. So one of the good things that PayPal did before they sold Magento was they actually kind of looked at what it needs to play with all the time. So your kind of Google API suite and Google Tag Manager is already in there. It's not in there to a level that's actually beneficial. So I'll be open about that. You've got basic Google Tag Manager.
Okay.
So you do need to get in there and extend it a little bit to make it relevant. But it's already connecting. The other thing is the reports inside Magento are quite useful from that. So if you think about what's going on at the minute with the whole third-party movement, the amount of data you're going to be able to get out of analytics or tag manager is going to shrink and shrink and shrink because the way cookies are working are going to change. So the data you've got from your actual transactions are going to be even more important. If you want advanced reports in Shopify, that's $2,000 a month because you're on Shopify Plus. Magento's got a built-in advanced reporting system where you can drill down on who's been ordering what product sells best at which month in the year, so you can start planning seasonality. What months do I get the highest turnover in? So then you can start planning broader seasonality. And you can really start going into the big depths then. So then when like people like yourself are going, right, data's drying up here, we need to plan a campaign that's going to be effective and go with the flow of what people are looking for. When you've got that kind of insight and data from the system, you can go, you know what, it's January. We don't need to worry about advanced running shoes right now because Tom, Dick and Jane, all they've done is made a New Year's resolution. They just want some $49.99 Nikes that'll make them look like they're doing a New Year's resolution, get them around the corner, and they're not going to do 30 miles, so we don't have to worry about shin splints. So we're going to push that range. Do you know what I mean?
So
or we're getting into April, people are in training mode, right? We're going to promote that semi-pro product level now, where people got a little knowledge, but you'll be able to see all that data from the back end of Magento. So what you rely on Google for at the minute, it'll still be there. Shopify, you've got to go to Plus to get that kind of data.
It's really interesting you say about all that because, you know, I know we harp on a lot about data on this podcast, a huge amount, pretty too much, especially from my perspective.
No such thing as too much.
No, there's not. And like you said then, in terms of seasonality, from an e-commerce perspective, it's really important. And I think I know we just discussed earlier, which when someone enters your site, how are they interacting with your website? Why aren't they converting? Are there, you know, is the add to cart button not, you know, once you've clicked it, suddenly can you not see the basket? Just little things, like we said about Amazon being so great. But actually, post purchase, that data, I don't think is looked at as well as it should be. I think everyone look at them as, God, I've spent 10 grand on ads this month, but actually I've made 100 grand back. Oh, fantastic. It is, and don't get me wrong, absolutely is fantastic, and congratulations because you made an absolute ton of cash. But what are they buying? What are they actually buying? And again, are there trends? You know, trends, exactly. Seasonalities. What is going on? Because forecasting for the next year should be easy. Then, if you've got that data, This should be a 10-minute job ish.
Yeah. And if you're forecasting now, you can manage your spend up until next year to make sure you hit it. Black Friday, if people aren't looking through what happened last Black Friday and looking at that data right now, they're going to be screwed come November. Because it sounds a million miles away. But if you think, if you're ordering stock for November, you need to order it by May, June at latest to to have 100% security that that stock's going to get to you, you need to be planning now because you need to know what you're going to do. But, and I'm so glad you mentioned about you spent X amount on ads and you got £100,000 back. If you start using that data and start tailoring the products and bringing people back for repeat purchases, because you're following that data and you're following the trending, you're servicing the need of those customers. If you then look to that ad spend over 24 months, you might go, actually, on that £200 ad spend, I made 157,000 back because actually half of them came back and brought again.
And I think the clever business owners now, especially in this e-commerce space, you know, we've called it the gravy train. You know, we did a podcast on this a few months ago about the last 2 years it's been easy. No disrespect, everyone's been at home, you've been furloughed, there's disposable income, you can't go spend it. It's been easy and anyone could have done it. And that's, again, probably a rise of Shopify in the last 18 months to 2 years. The companies that are really going to elevate themselves in the next, again, 12 to 24 months, the ones that they aren't looking at what's in and what's out, they're going to start looking at that. The average order value, how can I increase that? How can I increase my lifetime value? Which, again, no one even bloody looks at that because they look at it and go, well, why have we, you know, and I've got customers still at Let's Run Social that go, James, we spent £1,000, but we've only got 1,200 back. Okay, but you know the average order value is increased by 10%, yeah? But also lifetime value, if you tell me the figures that are right, you're actually going to make 6,000. So you've done 5 times. Oh, exactly. Yeah. But again, you've got to be more savvy now. You can't, and I think actually going back to dropshippers like we did earlier, I think dropshippers and how marketers have marketed themselves in the digital space have not helped this, because you've seen people set up an e-commerce site and going, oh, well, I can spend 100 quid in ads and make £1 million, or, you know, and it's easy. It's not. I'll tell you now. No. I wish it was.
The amount of times I see those adverts on Facebook, I can teach you to have £1 million e-commerce business. Brilliant. Anybody can get Orbello. Anybody. But what everyone's forgetting is, like 8-9 years ago, we had this. Dropshipping was huge. eBay was rife with it.
Yeah.
It's why AliExpress exists. Do you know what I mean?
Well, AliExpress, you look at that. You know, it's nuts, isn't it? But again, you know, the ones that are going to really, again, elevate themselves next year or two are the ones that are going to be looking at as an overall. The process is like you discussed then, you know, the pick and packet side, because they've hit that level where they're not going to plateau because they've got the systems in place to elevate them. And yeah, they may still be on Shopify Plus and still taking the hit, or they've got moved across to Magento and they've then got a little bit more in ad spend. You know, and there's not, I guess, you know, to conclude, there's not a wrong or right answer, is there?
It's whatever's right for that individual, for that business. They will know they will have a gut feel of what's right for them, and everyone's different. Like, I've got mate Nath, we can have this argument and he'll always harp on about how amazing Shopify is, because it's right for him, because that's what he likes. I mean,
I didn't know Nathan liked Shopify. I didn't realise that. I didn't know. No.
The final point in dropshippers, like, I would warn them that the biggest dropshipper out there is going to see what's selling well and take them out of the market pretty soon. So all these guys who do amazingly will have the same problem that all the big boys have. They're going to start competing with Amazon. Amazon's the biggest dropship in the world. And if a product's selling well, you can guarantee they'll pick it up and start selling it.
Yeah, I think the dropshippers of old, you know, I just don't think it's available anymore, because I think, in my opinion, the public understand it a bit more now. They're a bit savvier now on digital, which is why the third-party movement has come across. And people can moan all they want about people tracking them cookies and stuff. From my perspective, I'd rather be served content and ads that are relevant to me, because an algorithm knows more than me. That's the reality. Because I get served ads and I'm like, that's incredible. And I think I've used this story before in the past, but a friend of Nick and I's, who Nick goes to the gym with, he and Nick were having a conversation about he sleeps with a pillow between his legs. He's never told anyone this. And that night on Facebook got served an ad for a pillow that's specific for people that use them between their legs at night. He would never have known about that product unless he had that conversation. That conversation was picked up by Facebook and obviously the Pixel and the listeners. And I know it's crazy, and I know everyone's like, "Oh, it's a bit cyborgy." Let's be honest. We're sat on these all bloody day. We're cyborgs as it is. It's not going to make any difference, is it?
I mean, there's a whole other podcast there, isn't there? But yeah, people complain, "Oh, I don't want a chip in me. I don't want the government, or I don't want X, Y, Z, and what I'm doing." Turn your phone off then. They don't need to put anything in us. We don't need Minority Report. The device is there. You're giving them every ounce of ammunition they need.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is a shame because, like I said, the things like Shopify and Magento and people like us who serve ads, all we're trying to do is get the right products in front of the right people, and then once they click on those links, they're going onto a Shopify site or a Magento site or a site of some description that again fills the need of what they're looking for at that time.
Yeah, it's not malicious; it's value adding.
It's not malicious, and don't get me wrong. I know there are businesses out there that do stuff they're untowards, and I understand it. But good marketers get rewarded, which is why Facebook's algorithm works in a way that if you serve good content and you engage people on our platforms, the same as TikTok, we will give you a cheaper CPM. That's how it works. Yep. We're not an auction site. We've got one rule: keep our audience engaged. And if you're happy to do that, we will give you better prices. And it's simple. So that pixel information, although I understand Apple and I understand the issues they've got, it's a massive shame in my opinion, longer term. So
I agree.
But we'll call Apple and see if they'll change it for us, Matt.
You never know. So, I mean, the stock's really dropped a little bit, so give it 6 more months and they might realise, maybe we need to play ball with Zuckerberg again.
We'll see on that. But Matt, before we leave, where can people, if they are, again, a lot of companies that listen to this are e-commerce and they have a lot of times Shopify, hopefully not Woocommerce because we probably offended you a little bit. But if they want to know more about Magento or what you guys do, where can they find you and find more out about you and Magento?
You'll always find me on LinkedIn giving my thoughts, my 2 pence piece about what I think is right and wrong. I've got no bones about holding back. I apologise for the language now before you look at it. Or come to our website, which is www.actuate.agency. We've got a lot of information on there about Magento. We've got other platforms on there because I don't think racist is the word for it when it's platforms, but whatever the platform version of that would be. We like them all. And there's a lot of tips and tricks on there that business owners can do themselves to make their e-commerce better, because you don't always need someone like me. You can actually do it yourself. You just need to know where to look.
It's very honest, Matt. It's very honest. Well, thank you for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And we'll speak soon. Cheers for coming.
Brilliant.
Cheers, mate.